Hey folks, I'm Chris and I'm your Commander Mechanic. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that time is running out to enter to win a full 100 card Meren of Clan Nel Toth deck. The draw is next week. Be sure to check out the video linked up top to enter today. In this week's tune-up, I've been asked by a few viewers and fans to revisit not specifically a deck, but rather an entire archetype for a tune-up. We've taken a look at a few IZZET Spellslinger decks here on the channel, ranging from budget with Jori and Ruin Diver, through to combo-centric with Niv Mizzet, through to high power with Galazeth Prismari. But we're getting a brand new IZZET Spellslinger commander in Midnight Hunt, and I've been asked how Vadrik, Astral Archmage, fits into the IZZET Spellslinger hierarchy. For 3 mana, Vadrik is a 1/2 human wizard who focuses on the day-night mechanic from Midnight Hunt. When he enters, he makes it day, and when a player casts 2 or more spells in a single turn, it changes to night. Then, if a player casts no spells in a turn, it changes back to day. If a player casts only 1 spell in a turn, it stays the same. Every time day and night switches, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on Vadrik. Why do we want counters on Vadrik? Well, because our instants and sorceries cost X less, where X is Vadrik's power. That means at base level, Vadrik is a Goblin Electromancer, making all of our instants and sorceries cost 1 less. It is important to note, with the return of Flashback in this set, that Vadrik doesn't care where we're casting these spells from. Our hand, graveyard, or exile, they all get reduced. So let's take a moment and compare how Vadrik stacks up against other Spellslinger commanders and see what kind of contender he is to the title of Best Spellslinger Commander. First, let's look at the mono-blue Baral, Chief of Compliance. While Baral is a single color, he comes with a similar value floor as Vadrik. Costing 2 rather than 3, at base level, he discounts all our instants and sorceries by 1, just as much as Vadrik when he comes into play. Baral wants us to focus on countering spells for value though, with a draw engine stapled to him. But he will never discount our spells by more than 1 mana. If we're casting bigger and bigger spells and need access to red, Vadrik is going to be a better choice even if he does cost 1 more mana. Next we have Jori and Ruin Diver. Jori N wants us to cast 2 spells every turn to start refilling our hand. In the budget build of the deck featured on the channel, linked up top, we looked at ways to draw cards naturally, and the best way to cast free spells or spells that refunded mana in order to keep this benefit up. The deck took more of a direct damage approach to winning via smaller spells and drowning opponents in card advantage. Vadrik doesn't have a card advantage engine stapled to him, unlike Jori or Baral, meaning we need to focus on ways to keep our hand full in decks with him at the helm, or we're going to run out of gas fast. Then we have one of the newer contenders to the title, Veyran, Voice of Duality. Check out my build for Veyran, linked up top. Out of the Strixhaven Commander precons, Veyran has Magecraft, and wants us to focus on casting spells or copying spells to get our permanents to trigger twice. This is potentially very powerful, but wants us to split our focus between casting spells and having permanents that will trigger twice. This means a deck with Veyran at the helm is going to be 50% gas and 50% payoff. That leaves us with a very real chance we don't get to do anything, as we may draw the wrong half of our decks at any time. Veyran also lacks a draw engine stapled to them, unlike our previous entries, meaning most of the spells we're casting or copying need to be card advantage spells in order to keep our hands full. While strong, I like Veyran more as a combo or synergy commander than a value commander. Another newer entry on the list is Galazeth Prismari. This Elder Dragon turns all of our artifacts into mana rocks to cast instants and sorceries, resulting in some interesting and powerful interactions. Check out the high-powered build I put together for Galazeth, linked up top. Much like with Veyran, the combination of abilities on Galazeth wants us to focus half the deck on artifacts and half on spells, resulting in a bit of a diffused focus. You may end up with all of your artifacts and no spells to cast, or all of your spells and no artifacts to cast them. That can result in decks that feel like it's of two minds. Neither half can agree with the other, as they want to do different things, but want to do them together. While an interesting commander, no doubt, Galazeth falls short of being the best raw spellslinger commander. Niv Mizzet and their many incarnations, on the other hand, proves a strong competitor as a raw spellslinger commander. Check out my Niv Mizzet builds linked up top. While costing more, the fact that the Niv Mizzets trigger and deal damage and draw cards when you or an opponent do something makes them far stronger later in the game. They're almost always going to provide some sort of value, but the biggest benefit is the combo potential they hold. Niv Mizzet is budget friendly and combos with several redundant pieces to go infinite. Curiosity, Ophidian Eye, and Tandem Lookout. That kind of inevitability in an oops I win scenario make Niv Mizzet strong, but not necessarily the strongest. Niv doesn't care about how many spells we cast and doesn't help us with casting them, just giving us raw benefit in the long run. I feel the most apt comparison for Vadrik is Mizzix of the Izmagnus. This classic commander is experience-based, reducing the cost of our spells by the amount of experience we've gained, and we gain experience by casting bigger and bigger spells. The real bonus Mizzix has over Vadrik is that if Mizzix dies, you don't lose your experience counters, and once Mizzix returns, we get the exact same bonuses. When Vadrik dies, he loses all of his counters, on top of it being more difficult to get more counters on him to begin with. However, Vadrik comes down a turn earlier and immediately reduces the cost of spells by 1. In addition, we could help Vadrik discount spells by even more and faster, as it's based on his power rather than his experience. This could turn a pump spell like Titan Strength into a ritual that makes all of our instants and sorceries cost 4 or more less to cast. Let's take a look at how I'd build Vadrik and see if we can judge whether he's the best raw spellslinger commander we've got so far. First, we need to consider the mana base. This is very important in this deck since Vadrik discounts only colorless mana. That means we're going to be limited by the amount of colored mana we can make. So we can't spare any room for lands in the deck that don't produce colored mana. This means no Reliquary Tower, or Temple of the False God, or Karn's Bastion. No matter how much you like the lands, or how they may work in the deck, every land we have that doesn't make colored mana is a chance we run out of steam in a big chain of drawing cards and casting spells for just 1 to 2 mana each. Along these same lines, we can't spare any mana rocks that don't make colored mana unless they're going to get us a turn 2 Vadrik. Soul Ring or Mana Crypt are fine, but we'll find their less and less use later in the game as we no longer need colorless mana. Thought Vessel, Mind Stone, and Everflowing Chalice have no home in the deck, as making colorless mana is not what we want to do. If a rock doesn't make red or blue, it doesn't make the cut. Mana rocks like Chrome Mox put us at card disadvantage, but enable casting Vadrik a turn sooner. That's something that will be very important to us, and it's worth considering the inclusion if you're going for a faster, more powerful build. With this in mind, when we consider what cards to include in the 99, we'll want to be mindful of the colored pips in our instants and sorceries. The more colored pips, the more taxing it will be to cast multiple spells per turn. Each colored mana requirement is potentially a whole additional spell we could be casting. For instance, casting a Blatant Thievery for only 3 mana sounds appealing, but when you realize you could be casting 3 individual spells reduced to only a single blue pip for the same amount of mana, but with a much bigger or better effect, you realize what kind of opportunity cost your card inclusions result in. It also means we'll want relatively few non-spell cards in the deck. We're going to be creating a creature light list, save for anything that draws us cards or discounts our spells, and anything that doubles up on our value. Keeping creatures in the list like Goblin Electromancer and Baral help us get a creature down faster than Vadrik and immediately double up on our spell discount benefit. Birgi, God of Storytelling, is going to provide valuable fuel to storm off, netting us a red mana even if we cast a blue spell, allowing us to further cast more and more. Stormkiln Artisan is an important piece along these same lines, as creating a treasure can bank us mana to use on a turn we really want to storm off on, as well as providing another potentially threatening attacker. Archmage Emeritus will be important too, ensuring we're refilling our hand on every cast or copy of a spell that we have, and this is going to keep us fueled with gas as our engine gets running. And non-creature permanents will need to be kept slim too. Apart from our mana rocks, we'll want only either redundancy for discounting spells or ways to copy spells. Vadrik only discounts instants and sorceries, so we'll be paying full price for artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Keeping cost-reducing enchantments in like Jace's Sanctum is a fine option, but I'm more in favor of enchantments like Thousand Year Storm or Double Vision as ways to really ratchet up value from everything you cast. Enchantments like Shark Typhoon and Metallurgic Summonings can be game enders for us as we crank through spells, helping make massive armies of tokens every time we cast. And I really like the sneaky tech of Aria of Flame in the deck. We're spell slinging after all, and even if each opponent gains 10 life, we're going to be taking that back very, very quickly. Importantly, anything that buffs Vadrik's power is essentially a mana ritual for us. We can include actual rituals like Jeska's Will, Seething Song, or Mana Geyser in the list, all able to be discounted by Vadrik, but if we include certain spells that pump power, we're going to be looking at 1 mana spells discounting every subsequent instant and sorcery by 3, 4, 5, or 6 more mana. Smaller pump spells that cantrip are great here too, adding to our storm count and making each subsequent spell cost less. I really like Fists of Flame, for instance, as we're going to be hoping to refill our hand and draw lots of cards. Titan Strength turns 1 red mana into all your instants and sorceries cost 4 less this turn. And we can ratchet up that value with an Unleash Fury for only a single red mana to double Vadrik's power and our mana discount. Even in blue, a spell like Stealth Mission puts counters on Vadrik and makes him unblockable, a great enabler to make future spells cheaper, or get in for some lethal damage later in the game. Remember, anything that costs 2 mana with a single colored pip is a powerful tool that discounts our spells and makes Vadrik a threatening attacker. So then, what is our payoff? If we can discount our spells this much, then what are we doing with it? Well, here's where Mizzix and Vadrik align so well. Being able to discount X cost spells entirely is the strongest thing we can do. Whether it be draw spells like Stroke of Genius, Mind Spring, or Pull from Tomorrow, all discounted to just 1 or 2 mana, they refuel our hands entirely. Or burn spells like Fall of the Titans, Jaya's Immolating Inferno, or Crackle with Power that can all end the game. The higher we get Vadrik's power, the more we can pump into a single spell to take down multiple targets. Epic Experiment can act like a 2-mana spell-based Genesis wave for us as we get Vadrik's power higher and higher. Firemind's Foresight is a tutor for 3 cards spell for just 2 mana when we get Vadrik's power to 5. Even high mana value spells that don't have X in their costs, like Apex of Power, Magma Opus, or Animatu's Augury, are all very viable, very strong options to cast, which can only cost us 1, 2, or 3 mana. Comparing a Vadrik build to a Mizzix build, it looks like Mizzix wants to be casting spells that get gradually larger as the game goes on. Over time, every X cost spell you cast is going to be more and more powerful as you gain experience. On the other hand, Vadrik wants 1 good turn to really pop off. With a ritual and some mana, getting Vadrik's power up to 20 or higher shouldn't be an issue. With that 1 good turn, you can soak the discounted mana into an X cost spell and annihilate your opponents very easily. Every commander is viable and can be built differently. Looking at this archetype, it's clear that on the surface, these commanders all fit into the same archetype and generally want the same things, but all with their own twists and benefits on spellslinging. Check out my full Vadrik Astral Archmage deck list linked in the description below, and let me know what you think. Is Vadrik the new IZZET Spellslinger king? As always, folks, thanks for watching. Good luck, and have fun. As always, a huge thanks to our patrons. We could not do this without you. A special shout out to our Lodestone Golems: Ben Frayne, Sterling Langford, Will Briggs, Ben Davis, David Norrie, Corey Whitaker, Snipes, Cameron Scott, and John McManus. And our Metalwork Colossi: Charles Owen, Matthew Chandler, Pulsating Kiwi, Wyatt M, Timothy Conan, Matt Oakes, Stephen Dunn, Jeremiah Lewis, Wellsford Ranger, and Joshua Jackson. Thank you, everyone. You are all awesome.